Hello, everybody, and happy Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. New patch notes, guys. New patch notes for November 20th. Tomorrow. Um, so let's just get into it. Just doing a quick read through. I got a chance to look at these during work earlier, and I'm excited to share this with you. Uh, Patch notes for the November 20th, 2025 patch. In the first month after the early access launch, our focus was heavily focused on the here and now issues of getting players into a stable and consistent experience. A significant amount of that work has been how our backend and servers have been configured. Now that we are seeing a lot more stable experience, our team is able to start shifting their focus to long-term improvements and feature development. There are a lot of new things we are working on to get into the game, and that comes with development and testing to make sure we're not introducing new issues as we go. While we are gaining momentum on these new features for future updates, we have a number of fixes and updates coming this week as well. They get some headers here, but first we'll talk about general. Added the ability to remove offline players from your friends list. Fixed an issue where players were unable to whisper across strongholds. I know that's a big one. Added feedback in chat when a muted player tries to speak. The select previous target functionality was still not working as expected. This has now been fixed. And fixed an issue where non-boss, non-minion NPCs would collide with boss barriers. I know there was like some kind of like tech with Wraith Tide 7 where you could just like keep all the mobs outside of an arena. But anyway, UI changes here added additional context, block, parry, miss, etc. on the death recap for zero damage events. Fixed an issue where players' health numbers were being shown underneath the dead label when a player died. Fixed an issue where the texture on the player's health bar was displaying incorrectly. Fixed several issues where translated text was overrunning the buttons they were in. Fixed an issue where Mara's hero HUD blocks mouse inputs. And fixed an issue where the new active ability timers would not scale with the rest of the UI correctly. And then so now we have some like really big stuff that I was reading through earlier. So this is exciting. Progression. We discovered a bug in our damage calculations this week that was causing some strange behaviors for any effects that acted as a multiplier on your main stat, strength, intellect, and agility. We have fixed the issue in this patch, and we are keeping a very close eye on any unexpected ripple effects this may have for any of the heroes. In the limited time we had to test this internally, we haven't seen any dramatic effects, and please let us know if you notice anything out of the ordinary in this patch in regards to hero performance. So it looks like Chief Rebel's looking for feedback in case you happen to notice anything. But yeah, so there was a bug. The bug caused any percent main stat bonuses to be added to your base damage coefficient, even though they would show up on your character sheet as expected. So we have an example here for big damage abilities. So we're using Alarion's Highwind Arrow for this example. For this example's sake, we will ignore any other damage bonuses that may be active. No event horizon damage bonus, no buffs, etc. We will also pretend that Alarion has 0% crit, expertise, and no talents. Alarion's Highwind Arrow deals 865% of your agility damage baseline. With 1000 agility, that would result in an average damage of 8,650 per main target hit. With the 2-set bonus from Ransack of Drakheim, you are granted 20% increased agility for 20 seconds. This would result in your agility being increased from 1000 to 1200. That's, 20% of 1000. The expected result would be that your Highwind Arrow now deals an average of 865% of 1200, which is 10,380 damage per target hit. The bug instead added the 20% to the base coefficient, so that would have been 865% plus 20%, so 885% of 1000. So you can see right here like how this is really big, like especially for me as an Alarion player on our base thing. So I mean that's like 2,000 more damage per Highwind Arrow right there, just looking at that. In the case of Highwind Arrow, this has caused the Ransack of Drakheim bonus specifically to increase the damage of it by approximately 2% rather than the intended 20%. As you can look at 20% agility gain as a 20% damage boost, essentially, is what they're saying there. Example 2, small damage abilities. We're using Mara's volatile poison explosions for this example. The explosion from Mara's volatile poison deals 40% agility damage baseline With 1000 agility, that would result in an average of 400 damage per hit. With the 2-set bonus, you were granted the 20% agility. This would result in previous calculations from before. So normally it would have dealt 480. The bug instead made it do 600 instead of the intended 480. So in that case, with this like small damage stuff, this caused that bonus to increase the damage by 50% instead of the intended 20%. So you can see how like this like coefficient like coding bug has caused like some issues across the game. So that is why it would appear that Chief Rebel is like looking for any feedback like post this update. So we'll see like how people are doing damage essentially after this change. Now that this is working correctly, from the two examples above, you can see that this will cause small damage abilities to benefit less, while big damage abilities will benefit more as the patch goes live. As a result, we have preemptively adjusted the abilities that will get heavily affected on the negative side to compensate for this fix. Mara's volatile poison damage, for example, has been increased by 30% baseline as part of this compensation, so nice that they're addressing some of these. You can read the rest of these compensations as part of the hero tuning segment of the patch notes. This fix only affects the following effects, and then they've listed pretty much all the areas that we get percent stat increases. So Helena has a talent that gives her 30% increased strength after toughness reduces a set amount of damage. You know, we have the Capstone Dungeon tier sets, the Sithral Falls set, the Wraithtide set, and the Ransack of Drakheim set. So the gem bonuses, some of the weapon traits. So pretty much we'll see that. Interestingly enough here, any item level squishing. This is where we first discovered the initial symptom of the bug. When a player with very high item level and power played in a Contender League dungeon, they would sometimes deal 1 or 2 damage with their abilities. This was happening due to an extreme interaction with this bug. Players should no longer be squished to unreasonably low damage numbers when wearing full high item level gear in low league dungeons. Sorry, I had to yawn there. So, interesting stuff here. Check that out. So now for the hero adjustments. Many of the adjustments to heroes below are due to the percent main stat bonus bug fix and the adjustment to Voidbringer's touch, in addition to a few general bug fixes and adjustments. So Mako got some changes here. Adjustments below are both to help her catch up to Helena's damage output and to compensate for the percent main stat bonus bug fix, as Mako has a bunch of small damage abilities, so as covered before. So seen a lot of gains here across the board. Spirit Palm 12%, Wind Kick 40%, Earth Fist 12%, Earth Fist Barrage 15.1%, Rising Storm 5%, Lashing Storm Kick 8.9%, Spirited Vortex 33%, Stone Shield 7%, Shatter Earth 5%, Twin Souls 6%, Spirited Vortex now grants 15% dodge chance while active on you. It was 5%, so a 10% dodge chance increase. Nice. Spirited Vortex radius increased by 14%. That's also nice. Whoopsie. Enemies hit by Spirited Vortex now deal 10% reduced damage while they are affected by Spirited Vortex's debuff. 5-second duration. So she gets kind of like that same change that Helena had, where Helena's Sweeping Strike last week was changed to do some damage reduction, so that's nice. Some Rhyme changes here. Rhyme Glacial Blast damage was increased by 20%. Freezing Torrent damage was increased by 10%. Cold Snap damage was increased by 20%. And fixed an issue where Drakebreaker claws were missing visual representation on the hero. Alarion, some changes here. Sky Strider's Grace cooldown has been reduced to 120 seconds. It was 180. And Event Horizon now increases all damage you deal by 20% instead of 15%. Then Ardios change. In the previous week's patch, we increased the direct damage dealt by Ardios' Incinerate ability by a large amount, which we felt was needed to provide impact for that ability. During the week, we realized the ability had no damage scaling reduction when used on a very large group of enemies. This was an oversight, as all of our heroes' area abilities that deal direct damage have some form of scaling when hitting a predetermined amount of enemies. This is needed to make sure those abilities are still relevant to your damage on single target encounters, i.e. bosses. Clarify, this damage scaling will still cause your overall damage dealt with an ability to increase as you add more targets, but you will deal significantly less, or well, slightly less damage to each individual enemy the more enemies you add in. To avoid linear scaling, uh, hitting 32 enemies should not do 32x damage, or it would need to be tuned down until it had no impact on single target encounters. It incinerates direct damage while channeling now deals reduced damage when hitting more than 8 targets, was not being reduced. In case you didn't see it last week, there were some clips of Artios like hitting like 1 mil DPS or something like that when they um, were like just doing these crazy Sailor's Abyss pulls. So Mara, adjustment below or to compensate for the percent main stat bonus bug fix, as she has a number of small damage abilities. So Skittering Blades damage 12%, Arachnid Assault 10%, and Volatile Poison 30%. Vigor's Renewal Direct Healing increased by 16%, and then Sylvie, there was a bug fix here. Fixed an issue where the synchronized fluttering talent caused overcharged flutter call heal cast to deduct the mana cost twice. This fix results in it now correctly costing 200% of its base cost on overcharged casts, down from 400%. And then another really big entry here, weapons. The big update of this patch is the adjustment we are making to Voidbringer's Touch. In addition to some tuning to a few other weapons. So, Voidbringer's Touch, range DPS, and melee DPS. We have made adjustments to Voidbringer's Touch to address the extreme peaks the weapon was able to produce in regards to damage. This change also reduces the overall damage Voidbringer's Touch will deal, as it was intended to be a weapon that does not have the highest overall damage in a dungeon, but rather sacrificing some overall to gain access to an important tool, being able to focus down one specific dangerous enemy in a pack. With this change, we have also granted Voidbringer's Touch 100% critical strike chance. This means the weapon will always deal grievous critical strikes, causing it to have less extreme scaling with critical strikes than it did before, while not removing the value of critical strike chance. Grievous critical strikes gain an increase to the base damage equal to your hero's critical strike chance. This change also makes it more reliable in its performance, as those huge critical strikes for double damage, while fun, would also lead to very anticlimactic non-crits. With this adjustment to Voidbringer's Touch, we also made some positive adjustments to Hero's base kits to compensate. Voidbringer's Touch now accumulates 10% of all the damage you deal. It was 20%. It can now accumulate a maximum of 4,250% main stat before self-triggering, which is half of what it was before, 8,500% main stat. And the cooldown has been increased to 90 seconds. It was 60 seconds. More weapon changes down here below. Chrono Shift. Due to the amount of hidden damage output Chrono Shift grants players through its cooldown acceleration mechanic, we decided to tone down the damage slightly to make it more in line with the other weapon choices. So, the damage of Chrono Shift has been reduced by 10%. Earthbreaker. Oh, sorry guys. Wow. Earthbreaker melee DPS. Earthbreaker's initial hit damage has been increased by 10%, and the ticking area damage has been increased by 20%. And Alzarak Shackle, the tank weapon. The damage over time applied by the eruption is increased by 20%, and the attack speed of afflicted enemies is reduced by 40%. And Twilight Skybolt from healers, healing was increased by 20%. One of the last big changes on this patch coming tomorrow is curses. So we heard feedback that 2 of the curses in particular were causing a net negative on the dungeon timer to deal with, and have made some changes to address that in these cases. So, on Shadow Lord's trial dungeons, the Shadow Lord now has a 400 spirit point value. It was 0. The spirit point value is the amount of spirit points that you and your allies gain as you are reducing its health. An enemy with 10 spirit point value will generate 1 spirit point for your party for every 1% health your damage deals to it. The spirit point value is then divided among the players. So 4. This change causes the Shadow Lord to generate a total of 400 spirit points for your party, 100 each, causing players to be able to use their spirit abilities as the Shadow Lord spawns and then have their spirit abilities fully charged again by the time the Shadow Lord reaches 0% health. The health of the Shadow Lord has been increased by 10%. With the above change, we expect players to be using their spirit abilities in most cases to deal with the Shadow Lord. As such, we increase the health of it slightly. Keep an eye on how this affects the timer on a whole, and we will adjust accordingly moving forward if the gain is too small or too large. To further clarify, we have seen some confusion around the spirit stat and how it interacts with spirit point generation. If you have 20% spirit on your hero, you will get 20% more spirit points as a personal bonus of the resulting share. For Spirit Lord, you would generate 120 spirit points rather than 100 with 0% spirit. And additionally, on dungeons with the Malevolent Shade curse, Malevolent Shade's health has been reduced by 40%, which is insane. Upon defeating a Malevolent Shade, players are now healed for 85% of their max health. Previously, it was only 30, and gain 50% of their max mana was 20%. So actually, like, kind of crazy changes to Malevolent Shade. I know that those dungeons were not very popular to complete, so really cool change here. And then just two little things here at the bottom. Dungeons. This patch is fixing some issues with the boss encounter barriers. All dungeons. Boss encounter barriers now only affect players. All enemies can now use abilities and run through the barriers at any time. On Wraithtide Vault, Bale Orum's counter barrier has been adjusted. This change fixes an issue causing the treasure ball to sometimes be spawned outside the encounter barrier and then disappearing. Um, Lots of big changes in this patch coming tomorrow. As always, I'm streaming every day on Twitch. If you have any questions or you comments or you want to have a discussion about how you feel about these changes, feel free to stop by. I'd be more than happy to chat through them. But I will see you all later. Bye.